The 2021 WWE Draft is in the books. I covered the final night live after Raw on Monday, and boy was that a mistake. I thought the show 2 weeks ago was more enjoyable than usual, but I cannot say the same about whatever the hell that was on Monday. I mean, that was brutal to sit through. This is how the Raw and SmackDown rosters now stack up. Now keep in mind, all of these changes do not go into effect until October 22nd, so that is the day after the Crown Jewel pay-per-view. Both lists include names that were drafted after Raw went off the air on Monday, so these are the complete lists as they exist right now for Raw and SmackDown. Monday Night Raw has drafted WWE Champion Big E, which you had to expect, Bobby Lashley, Bianca Belair, the SmackDown Women's Champion Becky Lynch, which had to happen. Once they took Bianca, they had to bring Becky over as well. I mean, it just would have made what happened at SummerSlam and since SummerSlam look so much worse. So they had to draft both of them to the same show. Of course, where Becky goes, so goes Seth Rollins, so he is now on Raw, as is Edge. We have the United States Champion Damian Priest, Raw Tag Team Champions Randy Orton and Matt Riddle, AJ Styles and Omos are staying right where they are on Raw. The Women's Tag Team Champions, Rhea Ripley and Nikki Cross. Finn Balor is now on Monday Night Raw, as is Kevin Owens, Keith Bearcat Lee, the Street Profits, and per PW Insider. What did I say on the podcast a couple of weeks ago? We get a report this week now from PWI that there was serious consideration internally given to breaking up the Street Profits and sending Montez Ford to Raw, which is where Bianca Belair is, and having Angelo Dawkins go to SmackDown. Now, it didn't happen, but there was serious consideration given to splitting up this team. And right now, you've got Angelo Dawkins on his hands and knees, hands clasped like that prayer emoji, looking up at the heavens, thanking his lucky stars that they came to their senses and did not break up the Street Profits. Rey and Dominic Mysterio are now on Raw. Dolph Ziggler and Bobby Roode, or I should say Big Bob. You saw Raw Monday, you know what I'm talking about. Big Bob. Big Bob. That's the new name they're trying to get over. Big Bob. Karrion Kross, Alexa Bliss, Carmella, Liv Morgan, Nia Jax, Tamina, John Morrison, The Miz, Zelina Vega, Mia Yim, who has not been seen on television. I don't know that she's been on television at all this year. She's pretty much been gone ever since Keith Lee disappeared, right? With all the COVID stuff and everything. And I don't know that she was on television before that. I mean, maybe she was still doing Retribution stuff at the very beginning of the year. It's been a long time since we've seen Mia Yim on TV, but she's going to Raw. Shelton Benjamin and Cedric Alexander, Otis and Chad Gable, Apollo Crews and Commander Aziz, Doudrop, Dana Brooke, Tegan Knox, Akira Tozawa, T-Bar, R-Truth, Reginald, the 24/7 champion, Jackson Riker, Veer, Austin Theory from NXT, who made his main roster return on Raw Monday night. He came out, he was doing some stuff with Jeff Hardy where he wanted to take a selfie, and he was paying his respects to Jeff Hardy. My God, you're an inspiration. I watched you when I was a kid. And then he turned on him and he clotheslined him and dropped him and then took a selfie anyway and then walked out. So he's already on Raw. Drake Maverick from NXT now officially back on Raw. He's been on TV the last few weeks. And in a surprise move that I think was done just for the sake of being a surprise, 2021 Olympic gold medal winner Gable Steveson, who just signed a contract weeks ago with this company, is now on Monday Night Raw. And he is nowhere close to being ready. He has not trained to be a pro wrestler, let alone even had a match. Although there's a lot of, obviously hope that he'll turn out to be something like the next Kurt Angle or Brock Lesnar. I mean, he's got the pedigree, he's got the Olympic gold medal, he's obviously a great amateur wrestler, he's a big wrestling fan, has been since he was a kid. He's got all the tools that you would think, certainly athletically, I mean, charisma-wise, personality-wise, character-wise, that remains to be seen, but athletically, he's got every gift you could possibly ask for. So he may go on, who knows, he may go on to be one of the all-time greats, but he's certainly not main roster TV ready at this point, but it looks like they're just getting him primed for a TV spot next year. I think they just wanted to make the announcement. Now, of course, if he was such a big get, you could ask the question, well, then why was he drafted dead last? You know, if you think about it in those terms, if he's such a hot commodity, why didn't he go in the first or second round of this draft? Although I guess that's where the inexperience comes in. Anyway, he's on Raw, but I would not expect to see him on TV until next year. Because if they put him on TV any sooner, I just think that's incredibly dumb. Now, SmackDown has drafted the Universal Champion Roman Reigns. Fox was basically looking at WWE going, don't you dare even think about it. So Roman Reigns is staying put right where he is. Raw Women's Champion Charlotte Flair now on SmackDown. Drew McIntyre, Sasha Banks, the Usos, Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods, thus once again breaking up the New Day. King Nakamura, who I guess is no longer the king, so now he's back to being Shinsuke. And Rick Boogs, Sheamus, Cesaro, Shayna Baszler, Naomi, Jeff Hardy, who on Raw Monday night after his loss to Damian Priest was cutting a promo. This is before Austin Theory came out to lay him out. And it seemed he didn't say the name, but it certainly seemed as if he was teasing the possibility with what he was saying, talking about egos and things of that nature. The possibility that we might actually get a Willow appearance on WWE television in the not-too-distant future. He's done interviews talking about how he would love to bring the character to WWE. He's never had the chance to portray Willow on WWE television. Of course, if you've listened to this podcast long enough, you remember the days of the Impact reviews when I would talk about Willow and the metal object and all the Willow stuff that was going on that show. We may be getting Willow on WWE television very soon. We may be getting Willow against Roman Reigns. Sami Zayn, staying on SmackDown. Happy Corbin and Madcap Moss. The Viking Raiders. Angel Garza and Humberto Carrillo. Ricochet. Drew Gulak. Mace, who actually got some promo time on SmackDown Friday night. Mace and T-Bar are no more. Mansoor, Mustafa Ali, Jinder Mahal and Shanky, so Veer is all by himself on Raw. Natalya, Toni Storm, Shotzi Blackheart, Hit Row from NXT. And, by the way, they have since announced a North American title match with Isaiah Swerve Scott defending the championship against Santos Escobar. So that's going to be how they get the title off of him. Among the worst North American champions of all time in NXT history is Isaiah Swerve Scott. And I don't even say that as somebody who, thinks he's a bad wrestler. I don't have anything bad at all to say about Swerve Scott. I was very happy to see him finally find his footing in NXT and surround himself with people in this faction and start getting more TV time because he was just completely directionless for so long. And he hit upon this Hit Row thing, and then they put the championship on him, and he proceeded to have the most uneventful reign in the history of that entire company on that brand. And it's not even his fault. He didn't do anything wrong. I don't believe he defended the fucking thing even one time. Now he's going to defend it, and he's going to lose. Ridge Holland from NXT has been called up to SmackDown. Xia Li, supposedly because they want some Chinese representation on the main roster, so Xia Li has gotten the call up. What a great way, by the way. It's so nice to hear stories like that Xia Li is being called up from NXT to the main roster. Why is Xia Li being called up? Because they want a Chinese star. Not because they think, oh, this woman, she could be a big name, or she's got a lot of talent, she's got great potential. No, she seems to fit the criteria, so let's call her up. I certainly hope they do more with her than just call her up and just have her on the main roster for the sake of being able to say that, hey, we have a Chinese-born wrestler on our roster. See? But supposedly that's the reason why she's being called up. And Aaliyah from NXT is going to SmackDown. And I'm not trying to pick on Aaliyah, but I use Aaliyah as an example here because Aaliyah has been in developmental for a number of years. But it's not as if she was lighting the world on fire down in NXT. The fact that they drafted Aaliyah to SmackDown and left LA Knight undrafted on NXT is one of the more mind-numbingly stupid things that this company has done this year. Now, among the names that went undrafted and are now considered free agents, we know Brock Lesnar's a free agent, but we've got Asuka and Bayley, both of whom have been out with injuries. We have Elias, who got some vignettes teasing a new direction for his character and then fell off the face of the earth. Maybe he got lost roaming around the cemetery. Eva Marie, Gran Metalik, who recently asked for his release, and no word on whether or not he's gotten it. Obviously, we would have heard if he was released, and so he's still with the company. And Lince Dorado also went undrafted here. No mention at all in this draft of Dakota Kai from NXT, which is very strange. She's gotten some dark matches recently. But then again, so did Bronson Reed. And apparently he didn't impress, and they got rid of him. Hopefully that is not a bad omen for Dakota Kai, who has not appeared on NXT since losing to Raquel Gonzalez. Certainly she would fit into either women's division on Raw or SmackDown, but there was no mention of her at all. Being drafted, undrafted, it's like she doesn't even exist. And Harry Smith is another name. He was backstage at the show on Monday night, but he was not used. Nor was he drafted. He has been re-signed with WWE since April. And he was part of the very first match back in front of live fans. It was a dark match at SmackDown in Houston in July. There were reports at the time that one plan was for him to maybe go to NXT UK to feud with Walter, but John Laurinaitis pushed for him to go straight to the main roster. And then he had the one dark match, and he hasn't been seen since. Now, apparently he got COVID, but he's over it now. So it just seems like it's a matter of waiting and seeing where they want him to go. If you want maximum visibility, you don't send him to NXT UK. You send him to SmackDown. So as I look at these rosters, on paper, Raw looks stronger than it was coming into this. Stronger even than SmackDown, I think. Raw was able to keep most of its top male stars and raided a lot of the top male talent from SmackDown. You know, they kept Big E and Lashley and Randy Orton and AJ Styles and Matt Riddle and Damian Priest, but they got Seth Rollins, they got Edge, Finn Balor, Kevin Owens. You know, you could even throw in Rey Mysterio if you want to. I know he's kind of been phased down, but he's still a big name. So Raw won that battle. And they won the battle of the tag teams. At first I gave it to SmackDown, but as I look at it now, Raw has Orton and Riddle, Styles and Omos, who shouldn't even be a team for much longer, the Street Profits, the Alpha Academy, Ray and Dominic, the Hurt Business, you know, even Dolph and Big Bob, if you want to throw them in there too. Where I would give SmackDown the slight edge is with the women, picking up Charlotte and Shayna and keeping Sasha and Naomi and Toni Storm. 3 of the tag teams in the women's division, which was not much of a division to begin with. There were maybe 4 teams total. 3 of those teams are no more. They no longer exist. Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, they had technically already broken up a few weeks ago, but up until recently, they were a team. They were a team forever. And that breakup was long overdue. Now they're no more. Natty and Tamina are on separate brands now, so they're broken up, as are Tegan Nox and Shotzi Blackheart, who never even got the tag team title match that they were owed. How many wins and singles wins did they get over Natty and Tamina over a period of weeks on SmackDown? And they earned the right to challenge for the tag team titles, never even had a title match, and they are already broken up. The women's tag team scene has been decimated. They are better off using those belts for scrap metal at this point. And the fact is this, here's the reality check on this women's tag team stuff. Sasha Banks and Bayley were the ones who lobbied the hardest, publicly lobbied the hardest for those belts to even become a thing. And after they won them, they lost them 7 weeks later to the Iconics. And when that happened, that was pretty much the end of them having any real value. The titles hanging on the wall behind me right now are more valuable than the women's tag team titles. You know, I used an analogy for one of the members-only Q&A videos I did on YouTube this week when somebody asked me about heels and, you know, baby faces as champions. Are heels better as champions than baby faces? And I talked about the money really being in the chase. And I used the dog chasing after the car analogy. And I think it somewhat applies here as well. Sasha and Bayley were chasing after those titles. And they were lobbying for them for months. And when they finally got them, the company had no idea what to do with them. It's like, all right, well, we heard you loud and clear. We made these belts, right? Look at us. We're so progressive. We have women's tag team titles, and we've crowned our first women's tag team champions. And then they didn't know what the fuck to do. They hadn't even thought that far ahead. It's like they were only created specifically for Sasha and Bayley. And then a few weeks later, they dropped them, and they were never taken seriously ever again. Those titles are completely useless. Completely, utterly, totally useless. Now, one of our listeners, Tony, emailed me about the idea of a trade deadline. We talk about the draft every year. He emailed me about the idea of a trade deadline, like you see in sports like baseball. His idea was, you know, from the night after the Royal Rumble to the week before WrestleMania is your trade period. And he suggested you get 5 trades that are allowed per show, including NXT and NXT UK in that. I don't think it's a bad idea. I would limit it to 3 trades, not 5. And I would let it run through the night after WrestleMania. Why limit yourself only to the week before? Otherwise, I like the idea. But again, these people have never shown much of an interest or an aptitude for booking a proper brand split or anything fun beyond the draft itself. They came up with that dumb wild card rule. That was a Vince McMahon thing that was, I mean, they bust it out every now and then when they remember that it exists, but we knew that was not going to be an idea that was going to last very long. Trades would be fun. You know, doing the Battle of the Brands at Survivor Series for something more than just bragging rights like draft picks, if they didn't hold the draft so damn late in the year, or the 30th spot in the men's and the women's Royal Rumble matches. But they don't care. That's the point. They don't care. It's why you hear me every year talking about this. I talk about this, and you guys email me with these ideas because they have not been enacted, because they don't listen, because they don't care. They don't care. They're too lazy. It's just never been a priority to them. But I look at the Raw roster, and I ask myself, what are the 3 matches? What are the 3 matches or the 3 programs I would like to see the most as I now look at the makeup of this Monday Night Raw roster? And the first match that comes to mind is AJ Styles and Finn Balor. They find themselves on the same brand, former Bullet Club members, back on the same show. They need to do something with the 2 of those guys. I think of the match I proposed a few weeks ago. I said Kevin Owens is going to go to Raw. I would move him to Raw. And sure enough, he got moved. He gets moved every year. But let's get heel Kevin Owens back. Kevin Owens has been falling on his luck. He's down on his luck now on SmackDown. He's getting his ass kicked every week by Baron Corbin and Madcap Moss. Doesn't get any lower than that. Now Owens is going to go to Raw. It's not enough to just move him from this show to the other. There's got to be a real change. And whatever Kevin Owens' future plans are, and if they don't think he's going to re-sign, then they won't give him a push, I guess. But I think he goes heel. He could be an opponent and a challenger for the WWE Championship and Big E. Heel Owens against Big E is a program that I would work towards. And then Damian Priest and Seth Rollins find themselves on the same brand. I just think, you know, some of the matches that we've seen Priest having recently with Sheamus and others have been really good. We know Seth Rollins in the ring can deliver. I think a Rollins-Priest feud, you know, it doesn't have to be for the U.S. title, but I think Rollins against Priest would be a great match and a fun program. Over on the SmackDown roster, the first match I thought of that I would like to see, program match, call it whatever you want, Sasha Banks and Toni Storm. Although I don't have a lot of faith after watching what they did with Toni Storm on TV this week. But Sasha Banks and Toni Storm is a match I absolutely would work towards on SmackDown. Sheamus and Nakamura for the Intercontinental title. I think it's only a matter of time before Sheamus finally claims his first IC title. And then Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre would be the other one. It really is shocking to me. As I look at the SmackDown roster, even with the names that moved, it is shocking how poor of a job WWE has done building up anyone, who looks like the obvious choice to topple Roman Reigns, or who could even just kind of be on his level. I look at the roster and I say, okay, Roman Reigns has been the Universal Champion now for over a year. And I've enjoyed most of this run that he has had. At some point in these next several months or by WrestleMania, you should get to a point where you got to get the belt onto somebody else. I look at these rosters and I look at the roster that he's on right now. It's just shocking. I can't look at that roster and say, there it is right there. That guy there. That's the guy. That's the name that should take the championship from Roman Reigns. Even Drew McIntyre. He may end up being the guy. I don't look at Drew and say to myself, there's the guy. That's the guy that should beat the tribal chief and take the Universal title. No, Drew McIntyre is the closest thing that they now have on that brand, but he is not the guy. I don't look at him and think he's the guy. It all comes back to Brock Lesnar, who I don't think is winning the championship in Saudi Arabia, but they may run that match back at WrestleMania, and maybe then Brock takes the title. But how sad is that? If it comes down to Brock and Roman again at WrestleMania, that Brock Lesnar is the only one I can think of looking at these rosters who strikes me as somebody who should be the one to take the championship from Roman Reigns. Nobody else is ready. They haven't built up anybody else. And that's on the company. That's not Roman Reigns' fault. It's not like Roman Reigns is burying everybody he works with. Roman Reigns is working with all these people. He's programmed to work with all of these people. I don't blame him. It's not like he's actively politicking behind the scenes to bury people. WWE, they're the ones with their heads buried so far up their own ass, they have not built up anybody else who even remotely looks like they're on this guy's level. And now, as we get closer and closer now to WrestleMania, and we're going to be entering, year 2 of this title reign, it's all on them. They've had all this time, and all they've done is have him mow down guy after guy, and not taking the time in the meantime to build up 1 or 2 other people that you can look at and go, that's the person. I thought maybe eventually Big E would be that guy on the SmackDown brand, and instead they moved him over to Raw and they put the WWE Championship on him. So it's not Big E. It's not as if we haven't seen other promotions, even other brands within the same company that have had that dominant champion, that have been champion for even longer than Roman Reigns. Walter, my God, how many days was Walter? The NXT United Kingdom champion was over 800 days, I think. Ilya Dragunov felt like he was the guy. They had that great match in front of no fans last year, but they kept, building him up and building him and building him. And I said, it feels like the right time. Dragunov feels like the right person at the right time to take that title from Walter. He was the guy. And in the end, I was right. He beat Walter and now he's the champion. Even MLW just had their Fightland show. Jacob Fatu, MLW heavyweight champion, well over 800 days. Who was the guy to beat him? It was Alex Hammerstone, because they built him up over a long period of time, and a lot of people looked at Hammerstone and said, this guy right here, he's going to be the guy to end the reign of Jacob Fatu and take the championship away from him. There was an obvious choice. Right now, there is no obvious choice, maybe outside of Lesnar, that exists on SmackDown in WWE to take that title from Roman Reigns. And that's a problem.